I've played 400 rounds of golf over the course of more than a decade with these Arccos game tracking sensors. They're hands down one of my top 3 favorite pieces of golf tech of all time, and a lot has changed since I did my last review of them. Today I'm going to do a full review of the Arccos ecosystem, where it sits right now. We're going to talk about some of the updates in software, we're going to talk about some new hardware, and we're going to talk about the fact that, well, not everything's perfect. For one, it is getting more and more expensive, which is becoming a pain point for a lot of people. But the big question is Arccos worth it? And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a good understanding of whether or not it is right for you, as well as how it compares to other game tracking systems out there. So let's stop wasting time. Let's jump right into this Arccos review. Okay, so before we go any further, let's talk about what Arccos is. Arccos is a game tracking system. Essentially what you do is you take these sensors, you put them on your clubs, it then pairs with the app, and it is going to tell you everything you need to know about your golf game. It's going to tell you exactly how far you hit every shot. It'll automatically tell you how many fairways you hit, how many greens you hit, if you were in a bunker. It's going to give you strokes gained statistics for your drives, your approach, out of the sand, on the green, and more. It gives you all of this detail, gives you tour level statistics, and then it gives you recommendations for how to improve your game based on your actual data. Along with that, when you're on the course, it functions as a full GPS caddy. So not only will you easily be able to get distances to hazards and the green and all of that stuff that you would typically get with any other GPS caddy app, Arccos is also taking into account everything from weather, elevation, wind direction, to give you what they say are some of the most accurate plays like yardages in golf. To go a step further, Arccos has tracked over 1.5 billion shots. And so one of the things they've done with all that data is create a really robust AI caddy. So now with their newer AI caddy feature, it's going to look at all the statistics of your actual game, the current conditions of the exact course you're playing, and then it is going to give you club recommendations for every shot you're going to hit. So not only does Arccos track everything so you can look at all your statistics after the round, it is also one of the most useful tools I have found for improving your play during your round. So that's just the brief version of what Arccos is. There are also some changes we're going to talk about later in this video. They have a new rangefinder, but we're going to talk about that later on. So first, let's jump right into first impressions. What's it like when you open up the box? What does setup look like? And so on. So out of the box, Arccos does a really good job with packaging. This is probably one of the areas where they are head and shoulders above any other game tracking systems, and that is just polish and presentation. Not just with the packaging on the box, but with the whole ecosystem, with the user experience, with the app. Everything just kind of looks and performs better than most of the other options that are out there. It's also more expensive than most of the other options out there, so you get what you pay for. But overall, for me, my first impressions of Arccos, despite the fact I've used it for like 12 years now, if you were opening up a box fresh, if you were just getting started, everything feels very polished, very professional, because honestly, let's face it, they've been doing this for a really long time, and they've done a good job of dialing in the user experience. So the setup with Arccos honestly couldn't be easier. You download the app, you set up your account, you open up the box where you're going to have 16 sensors. So if you have a few extra clubs that you tend to rotate in and out, you won't have to switch the sensors for those, so it is nice that they include a few extras. There's 15 of these sensors that are all the same, and then each set also has a putter sensor, which is a little bit different and a little bit more sensitive. Once you get into the app, you can go into the section where you add your clubs, and this honestly works really well. So the most tedious part of this is taking all of these and screwing them into the butt of your clubs. You know, it takes 5 or 10 minutes, it's not the end of the world, but it can feel a little bit tedious by the end. But once you've got all those sensors on, you are then going to go into the app, you're going to set up a new bag, it's going to say, okay, show us your driver. And then you're simply going to point the phone at the sensor, and then boom, it's automatically going to recognize that this sensor is your driver. And then you do that for your 3-wood and your hybrid and all your irons and on down the line. And once you've got all of your clubs in there, you are then good to go. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, what is the battery life like on these sensors? So Arccos has a 2-year warranty on this, and then every time your subscription renews, you get 5 additional sensors sent to you for free. So for me personally, in years of using this, I've run into very few battery life issues, but there is one cool thing that I think makes this almost a non-factor. And I was going to save this for later in the review, but I think it makes sense to talk about now. So one of the things that Arccos has gotten so good at is its AI tracking. So what I found using Arccos over the last couple years is that even if you have a sensor that's dead, or even if you are using a club without a sensor, Arccos will still recognize that you hit a shot. So this can manifest itself in a couple different ways within the app. So one way is if you're going back and looking at the hole you just played, you're going to see a bunch of little spots where Arccos says, maybe you hit a shot here. You paused, or maybe you moved, or you did something that made Arccos think you might have hit a shot. So let's say you're in the middle of the fairway and you're hitting a 6-iron with a dead sensor. Well, then all you have to do is say, yep, that was my shot, tell it was a 6-iron, and that data is then in your app. Another really cool way that I've seen this manifested comes because a lot of times I'm using a lot of different drivers. So I'm reviewing different drivers for the channel and things like that. And so what I found almost by accident is often when I'm reviewing those clubs, there's no Arccos sensor on it. But then Arccos, after the fact, will have then accurately tagged every single drive I hit. Even without a sensor, it knows that I'm on a tee box. It knows that I'm making a swing. It knows that I hit a ball. Because I'm on that tee box, it's going to assume that I hit driver. And so being able to go back in the app and be like, oh, wait, like all my data is pretty much accurate despite the fact I didn't even have a tag on my driver, that is pretty wild. And so not only has this been useful over the course of the last couple years as I've noticed it become more and more prominent as well as get more and more accurate, but they're leaning into this idea a little bit more. And so later in the video, we're going to talk about what they're doing that actually eliminates sensors entirely, which may or may not be the right fit for you, but I at least want to let you know what that's all about and that it's going to be an option. Okay, so let's talk about what Arccos is like to use on the course. So Arccos is mapped just about every course you could ever want to play. It's all GPS mapped. The only exceptions are typically brand new courses or courses that maybe have received extensive renovations, but I've had pretty good luck emailing customer service to tell them you would like them to map it, and they usually can do that in a pretty timely manner. So when you start your round, you're going to see a GPS overlay of the hole you are currently playing. Everything I personally think looks really, really good in this app. I think that's one of the strong suits of Arccos is that the user experience I have just found to be so much better than Garmin or ShotScope or some of the other options that are out there. I will add a couple caveats to that is I think with this system or any of these systems, you really have to give it 3 to 5 rounds. There is a little bit of a learning curve. You do have to get familiar with the app. You do have to get familiar with what the experience is like, but once you've played like 3 rounds with it, everything starts to feel really second nature and really easy to use. What you'll then see as you're playing is that as soon as Arccos registers a shot, it will show it on the map. So let's say you're standing on the first tee with driver, it will show you what that is. Then as you are walking up the course, it will also show you what the distance is until you get up to your ball. So it'll then show you, yep, you hit a 238-yard drive. That's kind of one of the nice quality of life things I like about Arccos is that in real time, you can see the distances of all of your shots in ways that's maybe a little bit easier than with some other systems out there. But the way it knows exactly how far every shot you hit is then by you hitting the next shot. So let's say I'm 250 yards out in the fairway. My next shot is a 7-iron. As soon as I hit that next shot, it's going to be like, okay, drive 250 yards. It'll lock that in. And then it'll show me the distance of my 7-iron in real time as I'm walking up the fairway. Everything about the course is also mapped. So Arccos is going to know if you're in the fairway or in the rough. It's going to know if you are in a bunker or not. It's going to know if you're on the green. And so that's what allows you to get such in-depth data. So as far as on the course updates go, there have been a few big updates over the course of the last year with Arccos. One of the things that you'll find, and unfortunately a couple of these right now are iOS only. So Android users are probably going to be bummed about this, but I'm sure it's going to be released in the coming months. And so one of the things we talked about earlier is that AI caddy. So you're going to be able to get real-time strategy for every hole based on the course that you're on, the weather conditions you are playing in, and your exact game based on all the data it has about all of the shots that you've hit. I mean, honestly, it's pretty cool. You go in and it'll give you a couple options for how to play a hole. So say driver, it'll show you a dispersion of where all of your last 20 drives have gone. So you'll be able to see that in the fairway. It will then tell you what your projected score is based on hitting that club. And you might be like, you know what? I'm not feeling driver today. I'm hitting an iron off the tee. And so you can swipe over and be like, okay, 4-iron. Here's your projected score with a 4-iron. Here's where it expects you to land. Here's the dispersion of all of your most recent swings with the 4-iron. It gives you all that data and allows you to analyze your round. One other feature I like about this is you can go and pre-plan your round. So it's like, okay, I'm playing a new course tomorrow. I want to go in ahead of time and I want to see what my strategy is. And I can go in and I can play every hole based on the expected weather, based on my game, and I can get a game plan together for how I'm going to play that course. Overall, I found it to work really well. I don't necessarily think this is something for everybody. Not everybody wants club recommendations. Not everybody feels like they need them. But honestly, if you're someone like me and you travel a lot, you're going to play interesting courses and you're playing a lot of new courses frequently, to be able to go in and have an idea ahead of time of what to expect, I have found to be really useful. The other new feature they have recently rolled out is green maps. So you can now go in, and again, this is iOS only for right now. You can click a button, you can see a heat map of all of the different breaks on a particular green. If you just want the heat map, you can do that. If you want to add arrows showing all the breaks, you can do that as well. Again, this is one of those things that a lot of different brands have rolled out. We've seen it with Garmin watches recently. Personally, I don't think that's that useful. It's kind of one of those things, yep, cool, that's a nice little bonus, but I'm not sitting there like looking at a map trying to like read a green and read the brake. I would say it's most helpful if you're playing a course that you're not familiar with, you can't see the green, and you're trying to figure out how to play your approach shot. To have an idea of what those breaks look like can be helpful, but let's face it, for most amateurs, you should just be aiming at the center of the green anyway, so you can take all that for what it's worth. It's a nice little add-on, but I don't think it's something that's going to make or break the decision for anyone who's thinking about using Arccos. Okay, so now let's talk about one of the most important things, and that's just how accurate is it on the course? Like, how accurate is it at sensing shots? How accurate is it with tracking your holes? And overall, I would say it is very good. I would say for me, like 90 to 95% of the time, it is dead on. If I hit a shot, it knows I hit a shot. And if for some reason it didn't automatically tag, which is pretty rare, I know there's like a 99% chance I can go back, look at the hole. Oh, yep, you hit a shot there, click that, tell it what club, and away you go. These days, I've had very few instances where it will lose where I am on the course. Sometimes, especially in the early days of Arccos, if you're playing a tight course, maybe you go to a tee box and you start playing the next hole, and Arccos won't realize that you're playing the next hole. It still thinks you're on the current one. And if you do that and you don't go back and fix it, sometimes your shot data can then get a little bit messed up and you have to go in and fix it. For the most part, I very rarely experience that now. And for me, I will typically open up the app, keep an eye on it every few holes, just to make sure that everything is tracking properly. Along with that, also, if you have any penalty shots, obviously you're going to have to add those manually. And while it tends to be very good these days at recognizing putts, if you take a gimme or if you have like a total like tap in or something like that, you might have to like go in and hit the button to add or remove a putt. But honestly, these days, like Arccos is really good at tracking shots, knowing where you're on the course, and doing that without having any like major mistakes that need to get fixed. So that's honestly one of the things that I really like about this system, is that it can be kind of as hands-on or as hands-off as you want. So if you want to go in and you want all of your plays like distances, if you want AI strategy on every hole, if you want those green maps, you can be using the app on basically every shot, and it's going to give you legitimately useful information. But if you also just want to leave it in your pocket, not look at it until the end of the round, there's a good chance that everything is going to be like, you know, call it 85% good. You'll just have to go in and maybe you have to add 1 or 2 shots or add a penalty or add a putt or whatnot. But overall, that data will be there and it's very easy to make those edits. There's one feature that's new since I did my last review like 3 years ago that's one of the biggest difference makers in the Arccos system, and that is the set pin button. So essentially what this does, and there's a number of different ways to do this, which we're going to talk more about later on, but essentially the most basic way is if you're using the app, you can go up when you're on the green, you stand right over the pin and you hit set pin. So that's going to tell Arccos exactly where on the green the pin is. That's going to give you more accurate approach data, and it's going to give you more accurate putt data, because it will then know exactly how close your approach was to the pin. It will know how far that first putt was. So having that data is definitely going to be something you're going to want to do that's going to allow you to get the most out of the Arccos system. One thing that is pretty cool is if someone has already set the pins that previous day, say you're playing at like 3 in the afternoon, you can go in and see for every pin if it's already been set. But if someone else has previously set it, then you won't need to do that. So you can kind of look when you open up the app, there's a little icon so you can see if the pin is set or not. But that's definitely a nice feature and something to keep in mind, because I feel like there's a lot of Arccos users that don't know that that is actually a thing. These days, Arccos has also done a lot to make setting that pin even easier. You know, it's not that big of a deal to pull out the app and hit the button on your phone, but if you were using Arccos with an Apple Watch, you can literally just hit the button on the watch. And the newest and probably the best way to do it is with the Arccos Smart Rangefinder. With this, let's say you're 200 yards out in the fairway, as soon as you shoot the flag, it will automatically set the pin. It's actually really cool tech, and this is now one of the reasons why I use the Arccos Rangefinder for almost every round I play, because it makes setting that pin way easier, way less intrusive, and honestly, if I forget to do it, there's a good chance I've already shot it with this, so it's ended up giving me more accurate data by the end of the round. I will say the GPS is like 80% accurate. There's certainly occasional holes where I will set the pin, and then I will look back at the map and be like, oh, the pin wasn't there, it was kind of more over here. And that all comes down to GPS accuracy, the strength of the signal, all of that. But I found that to typically not be that big of a deal, and usually only happens a handful of holes during any given round, if it happens at all. And another thing that makes this a lot easier is when you open up the green when you're looking at your round, you can see a snail trail of exactly where you walked on the green. So it usually makes it pretty easy to tell where you were standing, where you hit your putt, and where the flag was. And so if things do look a little bit off, you can very easily manually change the pin after the fact or during your round. One final thing to say on this is, while over the years I've found Arccos to just kind of keep getting better and better and more accurate, there is no game tracking solution that is out there that is perfect. Just by nature of the tech, GPS variances, mapping variances, whatever it is, none of these are going to be perfect, and if you expect it to be perfect, you're likely to be a little bit disappointed. That said, especially these days, I found Arccos to be as good as you could possibly expect within those constraints. I found it to be more accurate, more reliable, and easier to use than any other game tracking system out there. We'll talk more about direct comparisons in just a minute, but I think most of you, if you're interested in Arccos, as long as you set your expectations and know there are going to be times that you'll have to go in and edit shots or add shots or make little adjustments here and there. But generally, as a whole, it's very good, and I don't think you're gonna have to do this very often. Hey, real quick, have you subscribed yet? What are you waiting for? We got cool videos like every week about cool golf stuff. Oh wait, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. I appreciate you. Back to the video. So real quick, let's talk about the data that you get within the app. So one of the things I really like is when you're sorting your data, you can go in and you can sort it by how many rounds you want it to include, as well as what comparisons you want it to make to a specific handicap. So as an example, I'm a 10 handicap. So let's say I want to go in for the last 10 rounds and see how all my statistics compare to a 10 handicap. So I can then go in and see that on average, I'm gaining 2 strokes with my putter compared to the average 10 handicap. I can also then see that I might be losing 2 strokes on my drive. I can also then see how my average shot distance is compared to a 10 handicap or a scratch golfer for that matter. I just think it's really interesting because often what I find is the thing that I think I'm good at, I'm not actually as good at it as I thought, and vice versa. Sometimes things that I think I struggle with, I'm actually doing okay at. So then when you're going in and looking at this data, Arccos will summarize this for you. It'll tell you what you're doing well. It'll tell you what you need to work on, but then it will also make recommendations for how you can improve that and different practices and different lessons and things you can do to improve your game. So between all the AI strategy advice, as well as all the real-time accurate data you get about your game, Arccos is one of the best game improvement tools out there. So often we think we know something about our game that ends up not being true, and so Arccos helps you improve the things that you need to improve on, but then also helps you get an accurate representation for where you're at so that you can make smarter decisions on the course. But for all of those great things, I haven't even touched on the thing that is honestly my favorite part about using Arccos. And essentially, my favorite thing is the fact it has become my de facto golf travel journal. So I travel a lot for golf. I'm still trying to play the top 100 courses in the world. I'm traveling a lot to write about and shoot YouTube videos at golf courses. And so for me to have Arccos on my clubs and be able to see every single shot I hit on some of those really memorable bucket list courses, I mean, that's kind of one of the coolest things out there. Like, I spend honestly more time than I probably should just going through old rounds and kind of reliving them. Being like, oh yeah, I remember that time I played the old course, and on the road hole, I went driver, 3-wood, 8-iron, and then made a 20-foot putt for par. Like, I can see all of that in the app, which is pretty cool. I can go see the par that I made on the 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass. Last summer on the 7th hole at Ballyneal, I hit a driver to 2 feet on the 7th hole and made an eagle, which was one of the best shots I've ever hit in my life. All within the app. But for me personally, to be able to go into the app and relive all of those rounds and see every single shot that I've hit on courses around the world, for me, that's the best part of Arccos. That's the thing that I love even more than the data it gives me. Okay, so before we go into some of the new hardware components of Arccos, as well as some direct comparisons to some other shot tracking solutions out there, let's talk about the negatives, the things that I don't like, and some things you should be concerned with before you buy Arccos. By far, the biggest critique, because using Arccos, for me personally, I really don't have that many issues with it. We talked about the fact that it's accurate 85-90% of the time. You might have to make a few edits here and there, but that's all kind of to be expected. I don't necessarily look at that as a huge negative. The thing that is a huge negative is the cost. Arccos has gotten more expensive over the years, and there's a lot of golfers that are just finding that even if they like it, it's not worth the expense. So a new set of sensors retails for $250. You can then use the coupon code BE15. That's going to knock that price down to about $212. $212 for the sensors to do everything that we talked about here? Well, that seems like a pretty good value. Problem is, there is a subscription with Arccos. To use Arccos, to use the sensors, to get all of the stuff we have just talked about, you have to pay $199 a year. Now your first year is free, so that eases the burden a little bit, but $200 a year is a lot of money for a lot of golfers, especially in a world where it seems like every golf tech company is charging a subscription. So the fact that golf is already a pretty expensive sport, and you gotta buy the sensors, and then to spend $200 a year, especially if you're a casual golfer, or maybe you're someone who lives in the Northeast and there's 5 months out of the year where you can't golf, that subscription can feel pretty high, because honestly, it is pretty high. So because of that, Arccos isn't necessarily going to be right for everybody. So if you're someone who only plays once or twice a month, then the per round fee just may not be that worth it for you. And I completely understand that. But honestly, as far as negatives go, these days, that's really my only personal big complaint, big critique with Arccos. Between the software updates, between it getting more reliable, between the fact it's got a really good user experience, I think it's the best game tracking system out there. Oftentimes you'll see people in the comments talk about switching or they didn't like this or that. I would say to those people, if it's been a few years since you've used it and your concern is accuracy, I would say give it another chance, because everything, even though I thought it was pretty good before, over the last couple years, it's gotten even better. One other complaint that I often hear about is with these sensors, apparently there is a very soft, like buzzing sound when they are activated. My ears aren't that good. I've had my left eardrum rebuilt twice. I have never heard it, but I've talked to some people over the years that say they can't stand that buzzing. So if your ears are that good, well then, you know, congratulations, that's good for you. But for me, that's personally been a non-issue. I've also heard people say they don't like having sensors on the clubs. Some people will say that it adds to the weight, which, I mean, these things are super light. Like, I don't think most people realistically are noticing the weight difference of these, but also they occasionally come loose and you have to retighten them. So for some people that might be an issue. Also for the people that do have issues with the sensors, then I would recommend the smart grips. So Arccos makes grips that have the sensors built in, which is honestly, it's a more elegant system to not have to have this. The downside is that if you're someone who switches clubs often or you're constantly like rotating stuff in and out of your bag, well, then the grips are built in, so those aren't going to work very well for that. Also, those grips don't have the hole in the butt of the club. So if you're wanting to try a different system or anything else, you won't be able to screw any other sensors or any other accessories into that. So that's just something to keep in mind. But for me, if I weren't constantly switching out grips and clubs to review things, I would go with the smart grips just because they're that much more user-friendly, that much more elegant. It's just a nice experience to use them. So there you go. Those are really my only like complaints about the system. Like really my biggest critiques, my biggest problems with the system all come down to price. We talked about that subscription. We're going to talk about some other things that are adjacent to that here in this next section. But overall, from a performance standpoint, I can't recommend Arccos enough. I wouldn't have played 400 rounds with it if it wasn't good. Okay, so in this next section, I want to talk about some of the other Arccos options that are out there as far as how to use it and some of the new hardware accessories that go along with this system. So first off, let's start with like the old standby, and that is this. This is the Link Pro. Hey, Editing Sean here, and in the 2 weeks since I shot this video, basically everything has changed with the Link Pro, which is now known as Arccos Air. So I wanted to reshoot this section, I wanted to tell you what those changes are and share my experience with Arccos Air so far. So previously what the Link Pro did was it allowed you to play golf, get Arccos data without having to have your phone on you. So you would simply pair this with your phone at the beginning of the round, you'd put your phone away, and you would put this in your pocket and it would track every shot that you hit. There's also a button on the side of it which will allow you to easily set the pin for more accurate approach and putting data. And to be clear, this device can still do all of that, but they have rebranded it to be known as Arccos Air. What is Arccos Air, you might be wondering, and why rebrand it? Because now you can use this device and get Arccos data without having to use any sensors at all. From a physical standpoint, the device and the charger are the exact same as it has always been, except now you get the benefit of being totally sensorless if you would like to be. I've personally played 4 rounds with the new Arccos Air, and it works pretty much exactly as I expected to. Just like the Link Pro before it does a great job of recognizing pretty much every shot you hit. I've only had it miss 2 or 3 over the course of 4 full rounds, but where you might notice the difference between this and the sensors comes down to accuracy of what clubs you're using. Because you don't have sensors, the app and this little device are essentially making guesses around what club you're using on any given shot. In my experience, it gets it right about 60 to 70% of the time, and the more you play, the more Arccos learns about your game, the more accurate it's going to be. But if you're stuck under a tree and you hit a 100-yard punch 5-iron, it's probably not necessarily going to know that that's a 5-iron. It might think you hit a gap wedge. And so editing, as it's always been with Arccos, is very easy to do. It only takes a few seconds to change, but there is a little bit more editing work if you are using Arccos Air without sensors. In order to use this, you will still need an Arccos game tracking subscription, and this retails for $349, but just like everything else on Arccos, you can use the code BE15 and it's gonna knock 15% off that price. There is a lot more I could say about Arccos Air, but I already did that. So I just published a full detailed review on my thoughts of Arccos Air, how it works, who I think it's for, who I think it's not for. So if you're interested in this device, you can go watch that review right up here. Okay, sorry for the interjection there. Now back to the original review. I just wanted to make sure you had all the most up-to-date information. One other thing I want to mention that's similar to the Link is that Arccos has excellent smartwatch capabilities. So specifically, if you're using an Apple Watch Ultra, that is probably my favorite way to use Arccos. I don't have to worry about my phone. I can tell the app to track everything using my watch, and then on my watch, not only can I set the pin, but it will then use the watch to track all my shots, but then I can also get GPS yardages on the watch as well. So that's one thing that you're gonna miss out on if you're using the link specifically to avoid having to use your phone, is you don't get those yardages. And so having all that data, being able to keep score, get GPS yardages, set the pin, do all of that on the Apple Watch is my favorite way overall to use Arccos. The problem with that is I switched from an Apple Watch to Garmin a few years ago, so now I rarely do that. I want Garmin to have all of my health and fitness data, so I'm typically wearing a Garmin watch when I'm on the golf course. But all that to say, if you have an Apple Watch, you should definitely try it with Arccos. It works really well. I also believe that they have Android integrations for their smartwatches as well, but I'm not sure specifically which watches there are, and I don't know how well it works. I'm not an Android guy and I haven't tested that, so if you're an Android user, I apologize for that. And finally, a new piece of hardware that I mentioned briefly earlier is this. This is the Arccos Smart Laser, and honestly, it's one of the best rangefinders that I have used. The glass is excellent. It locks onto the flag really well. The display is super crisp and clear. And then you have the two major smart features of this rangefinder. So the first is that when you're using it, when it's paired to the app, you're going to get 3 numbers in the viewfinder. You're going to get the actual laser distance. You're going to get a plays-like distance that they're saying is the most accurate plays-like distance in the game because it's taking into account environment, wind, elevation, wind direction, nearly all of the possible components that could affect the distance of your shot, it is taking into account. And honestly, it works really well. I have found the numbers to be surprisingly accurate and surprisingly useful. And then you will also get a third number that is gusts. So that's taking into account the current wind. And if you were to hit a wind gust, it's telling you what the ball could be likely to do. So whether you're going downwind or hitting into the wind, it's just kind of one more data point that's going to help give you more confidence in which club you should hit. The other smart feature of this we already touched on. That's where if you shoot the flag, it will automatically set the pin on the green, giving you more accurate approach and putting data. So all that to say, the Smart Laser is an excellent addition to using Arccos. But this kind of brings us back to the problem, is that it's $299. But then if you want to use anything, like if you even want to range a number, you have to have a subscription. Now, if you already have the game tracking subscription for $199 a year, you can get this for an extra $99 a year and your first year is free. So all in, if you want the full meal deal, best Arccos experience, it's gonna be $199 a year for the sensors or Arccos Air, and then an additional $99 a year if you wanna add on the rangefinder. Now, there's also a new option to just use the rangefinder. Let's say you don't wanna track all your data, you don't want the game tracking subscription, you don't want anything else, but you like the idea of having a really good rangefinder with some of the best plays-like distances out there, well then there's now an option for you. It's $299 for the rangefinder and an additional $199 a year just for this. And again, I believe your first year subscription is free. But honestly, I don't think I've ever received so many negative comments on a video as I did with the review of this. Because it's one thing to pay one subscription, but then to pay 2 subscriptions, well, it's a lot to swallow for a lot of people. My response is, yeah, it's a lot of money. I feel like there should only be one subscription, but also it really does enhance the experience. And if you are an Arccos power user, then the data and the user experience it gives you to have all of these things, honestly, it's worth it. Do I like it? No. Do I completely understand everyone's point of view? Absolutely. Do I recognize there's a lot of people that are switching from Arccos because it's expensive? Yeah, and in some cases, rightfully so, because it is expensive. But to that end, I really do think it is the best game tracking system out there. And in just a second, we're gonna talk about some of the other ones and why one of those might be a better fit for you. But again, this brings me back to my point that my only major critique with Arccos is the cost. And yeah, I think it's high. I think it's higher than it should be on an ongoing basis. But they do provide a good product, they do provide a good experience, so you have to decide for yourself if you think it's worth it. And finally, this is a long video, I'm sorry, but I really, there's a lot that goes into Arccos, and it's been 3 years since I've done this dedicated review, so I wanted to make sure I touched on everything. So let's talk about a couple of the other most popular game tracking systems, how they compare to Arccos, and help you figure out which one is right for you. So the big one you're going to find is ShotScope. So ShotScope is a budget-oriented brand. They have rangefinders, they have GPS watches, they have shot tracking systems, they now have a launch monitor that are all very budget friendly, and the thing that people love about them most is they don't have any subscriptions for any of their products. Now, ShotScope has 2 different types of game tracking solutions. Their cheaper one requires a manual tap in order to use it. So you'll have sensors on your club, and then you have to then tap it to a watch every single time you hit to then mark where it is on the map. I personally do not like the systems where you have to tap. Is it more affordable? Absolutely. Is there no subscription? Yes. But the inconvenience of having to tap every shot, I just don't like that. I know there are some people that build that into their routine, and that's part of their pre-shot routine, and that works really well for them. That's just not me. But if that is you, then definitely go check out, I believe it's the H4 system from ShotScope that does that. It's significantly less expensive Arccos, and it'll do the job. But what I think is kind of a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison are either their V5 or their X5 watches. So these are systems similar to Arccos where it will automatically track every shot. One thing that's kind of nice is it comes with its own GPS watch. So not only will you get all the game tracking when you pair it with the app, but then with the watch, you're also able to get all the GPS yardages on the course. Now, depending on which one of these you want to go with, they're either like $250 or $300. I've also got a coupon code for ShotScope, so I'll link to that below if you decide ShotScope is a better fit. But the reason I don't personally use ShotScope for me comes down to a couple things. One, I think the user experience on Arccos is like night and day better. Like Arccos really feels like a high-tech app in 2026. The experience using ShotScope definitely feels a little more bare bones. It does feel a little bit more dated. I personally don't think it's as user-friendly. And one thing that I really don't like about it, and this might have changed since I've last reviewed it, so someone tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe you're not able to edit anything in real time during the round. You finish the round, and then you can go back in and edit missed shots or change clubs or do whatever you need to do. I'm personally just someone who likes doing that on the course. By the end of the round, I may have forgotten what happened or whatever. So to not have the ability to edit shots during the round, I think is a big miss. And I'm sure if I spent more time with it, it will become much more second nature. But I just don't think the app in general is super user-friendly. I also, going back to something I previously said, pretty much always wear a Garmin watch when I'm golfing. So I personally don't want to go wear a different GPS watch because I'm tracking everything in Garmin. But that being said, I recognize there is immense value here. To be able to go and for well under $300, get a GPS watch, get good shot tracking. It's just not as good as Arccos in my experience. And to do it all with no subscription, like that is a huge selling point. And so if you have an issue with the cost of Arccos, then I would absolutely go look at ShotScope. Even though I don't like the experience quite as much, it still gets the job done and is going to be the right fit for a lot of people. The other major shot tracking system you might be considering is Garmin. So Garmin has two types of sensors. They have the CT10 sensors, which is the most similar to Arccos, where it will automatically track your shots. And then it has the CT1 sensors, which are more similar to the manual ShotScope ones that we previously talked about. In order to use those, you'll have to tap it to a compatible Garmin watch. And again, for me, just for the reasons that I already said, I don't like tapping. I'm going to forget to do it. It's cumbersome, whatever. Those aren't typically something that I would recommend, although they are significantly less expensive than the CT10 sensors. So if you're on a budget and you already have a Garmin watch, that is something to maybe consider. The CT10 sensors from Garmin are actually a little bit more expensive than the Arccos sensors. They're $300 retail for a full set, and you have to have that compatible Garmin watch. So I believe the cheapest watch that's compatible with these sensors is the S42, which is $299. So you're looking at a minimum of $600 all in to start using the Garmin system. And honestly, this is another one where the user experience just doesn't even come close to Arccos. I've been waiting for years for Garmin to do a full overhaul of their Garmin Golf app. There are things I really like about it. I like the fact that if you have other Garmin products, there's only one app. So all of your practice data, all your rounds, everything is in one app, which is really nice if you're already using the other Garmin devices. But when it comes to their shot tracking, not only do the maps not look very good, I haven't found them to track very accurately. I haven't found the data you get to be all that in-depth. You don't get nearly as much data as you get with either ShotScope or with Arccos. So I just personally have not loved that experience. One thing that is nice is if you have one of the higher-end Garmin golf watches, like say the Approach S70, it has shot tracking built into the watch. So you don't necessarily need any sensors at all. So you can turn that feature on in the watch, and then after every shot you hit, it will just ask what club it was, you tell it, and then it will track it all just as if you had sensors. Now the sensors obviously make this a lot easier, a lot less cumbersome, a lot less invasive. But if you like the idea of shot tracking and you already have a higher-end Garmin watch, then just go try that out. See if you like it and see if you like the Garmin system. And if you do like the Garmin system, then you can invest in some of their sensors. Or if you're kind of like me and you're like, you know what, this needs a big update that it hasn't got, then maybe consider trying one of the other options. But the people I recommend Garmin for is really the people that are already in that Garmin ecosystem. But I just don't feel like shot tracking has been a priority of the company because it's been years since those CT10 sensors came out. We haven't really seen any major updates for them. So hopefully sometime in the coming months, the next year or two, we're gonna see a big update there because I think that could be a whole lot better than it is. So there you go. So those are my thoughts on Arccos compared to some of its bigger competitors. I haven't tested GolfPad GPS. There's a couple others out there that I haven't tested. So I will continue to try and do that, but I'm just one guy. So I do the best that I can. And these shot tracking sensors are things that are pretty time intensive to be able to test properly. So that's why I haven't gotten to some of the other ones. But all of that to say, for this video that was way too long, 400 rounds later, I still love Arccos. Do I think it's expensive? Yes. Is it right for everybody? No. But is it the best at what it does? I think yes, and that's why I continue to use it, and that's why it's continued to be one of my favorite products in golf. And with that, my name's Sean Ogle. I'm the founder of this thing here at Breaking 80. We're talking about cool golf products and cool golf courses. If you do decide that Arccos is right for you, remember you can use that code BE15. It's gonna drop 15% off the cost of any of the products that you decide to buy. I will get a commission if you use that, so totally understand if you think that makes me biased or you don't trust me or whatever, go do your own research. But everything I do here is just to try and help you find the right products for your needs. And if you enjoyed the video, then give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe, drop a comment. I will do my best to answer any questions you have about Arccos because I'm obviously very experienced using the app. So with that, I hope you have an excellent day and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.